Billionaire sees janitor's daughter solve complex problem. What he did shocked everyone. The billionaire CEO never noticed the janitor's daughter before. But today, at the gleaming heart of his empire, a 9-year-old girl quietly defeated a grandmaster in her mind, while sweeping floors. In the echoing silence of the tech giant's marble lobby, amid flashing screens and hurrying suits, Lina Rivera moved unseen, but her mind was a battlefield of calculation and strategy. No one knew that the janitor's dusty broom was wielded by a hidden genius who could outthink the best on the planet. Lina Rivera, cloaked in an oversized sweatshirt far too big for her small frame, crouched behind the janitor's supply closet, as silent as the shadows it birthed. Her fingers traced intricate paths across the chessboard sketched in her battered notebook, scribbles that made sense only to a mind far beyond her years. Each move was a step in a battle that played not across centuries-old wooden squares, but in her vivid imagination where queens fell and kings trembled. Outside, the marble floors gleamed beneath the feet of executives who passed unknowingly, their briefcases heavy with contracts but their eyes blind to the quiet storm brewing beneath them. Her mother Alma's steady footsteps hummed a lullaby in the background, a reminder of a world few ever glimpsed behind the glass walls. That evening, in the quiet solitude of their modest apartment just blocks from the towering Granger Tech complex, Lina sat at her small wooden desk under the flickering glow of a worn-out lamp. Her long fingers gripped a freshly sharpened pencil, poised above a crisp sheet of notebook paper. Tonight, she was writing a letter, not to a friend, a teacher, or even her mother, but to the billionaire CEO of the very company she dreamed of breaking into. Her handwriting was neat, deliberate, every letter crafted with care as if the success of this note hinged on each curve and line. She wrote, "Dear Mr. Granger, I am Lina Rivera, daughter of the janitor Alma. I have watched your empire grow, but no one has ever looked at me, or my mother, like we are more than background noise. I challenge you to a 15-minute chess match. Let me show you that sometimes, genius comes in the most unexpected forms." Contemplation swept across her face as she reread the message. There was honesty woven between every word, a fragile hope that this one risk might change everything. She wasn't naive. She knew the odds were against her. The man she addressed had millions under his control, a kingdom built on innovation and power where children like her didn't belong, not visibly, not ever. Yet, beneath the folded folds of doubt lay an unspoken defiance. Lina's mind reeled with possibilities. What if he said yes? What if the game began and she bested him? What doors could open? She imagined herself sitting across from the CEO, not as the janitor's daughter, but as an equal, a genius recognized. She pictured the murmurs of disbelief transforming into whispers of admiration. With a decisive breath, Lina folded the letter carefully and slipped it into an envelope she had scavenged from the recycling bin at Granger Tech's mailroom. The envelope was plain but carried the weight of her dreams. She sealed it firmly, as if that waxy strip could guard her hopes from the cold walls of corporate dismissal. The next morning, with trembling hands, Alma accompanied Lina to the sleek office building. The janitor's usual routine was altered. This time, they weren't just passing through halls unnoticed. Alma looked nervous, but stood tall, her determination bolstered by her daughter's courage. Together, they found the CEO's secure office door, and Alma slipped the letter beneath it, her fingers reluctant to let go. Back in the lobby, Lina clutched her mother's hand tightly. The air was thick with anticipation. Neither knew what the day would bring, but something subtle had shifted. The invisible boundary between their world and the billionaire's domain had been dared to be crossed. That letter was the first ripple in a tide that neither Lina nor Elliot Granger would see coming. Elliot Granger's office was the pinnacle of sleek modernity, a glass-walled sanctuary perched high above the city, commanding views that stretched toward the horizon. Today, like every morning, Elliot strode into the space with a sharpness that matched his impeccably tailored suit. His mind buzzed with quarterly reports, product releases, and investor meetings, each demanding his total focus. But as his eyes landed on the plain, cream envelope that whispered against the polished steel doorframe, a flicker of something unfamiliar stirred inside him. He bent down, sliding the envelope into his hand, inspecting the crisp handwriting. No official seal. No signature from a known associate. Just a neatly penned challenge from the janitor's daughter. A name he'd never heard spoken in meetings or seen at company events. Intrigued despite himself, he broke the seal. The letter's contents arrested him. It was not a plea for charity or a request for employment. It was a bold, disarming challenge written with the innocence and raw confidence of youth. Let me show you that sometimes genius comes in the most unexpected forms. Elliot sat back in his leather chair, the cityscape sprawling behind him, but his attention was consumed by the words before him. For all his intellect and power, he realized he rarely encountered genuine surprise. Most interactions were calculated, transactional, predictable. This letter was different. It promised something unscripted. His fingers tapped the desk, a subconscious rhythm matching the rise of a long-suppressed curiosity. What hidden worlds existed beyond the polished narratives woven for shareholders and boardrooms? Could the buzz of raw talent truly emanate from a janitor's child? The CEO, known for his decisive efficiency, found himself confronted with an unfamiliar hesitation. The letter challenged not just his chess skills, but his assumptions about talent, class, and visibility within his empire. As he rose to leave the room, Elliot made a decision that rippled beyond the business charts and market trends. He instructed his assistant to arrange a meeting, not just with the janitor, but with her daughter as well. The invitation to a chess match was both symbolic and literal, a test. In that moment, the veneer of corporate detachment softened, and a different game began, one where curiosity and courage would clash with convention. Little did he know, the game wasn't just about chess. It was the beginning of a story that would reshape everything he thought he knew. The elevator doors slid open with a soft ding, revealing the sleek, polished floors of the executive wing that seemed a universe apart from the mundane world Alma Rivera knew so well. The cold, clinical hum of AI assistants and murmured conversations filled the space as Alma hesitated, clutching the cleaning cart handle with knuckles white with tension. Beside her, Lena's small hand slipped into hers, steadying her like a sister rather than a daughter. For years, Alma navigated the shadows of the company's gleaming corridors, an invisible force who cleaned offices at night, swept away discarded papers, and mopped the floors without ever hoping to be seen. But today was different. Today, she carried more than a mop and bucket. She carried her daughter's letter, her dreams, and a flicker of unspoken hope. Together, they approached the massive glass doors leading to CEO Elliot Granger's office. The air felt heavier here, thick with the weight of expectations and unspoken rules. Alma swallowed her apprehension. The memory of late nights working double shifts, of sacrifices made so Lena could thrive despite their humble means, flashed through her mind. This moment, she understood, was the culmination of all those silent struggles. A sharp click marked the door's opening, and a confident voice beckoned from within. "Come in." It was unexpected, an invitation. Alma exchanged a glance with Lena, whose eyes shone with a mixture of fear and determination. Inside, Elliot Granger greeted them not as a towering corporate titan, but as a man curious and poised. The room was vast, dominated by a sleek chess set resting on a glass table, a silent challenge waiting to be answered. Alma handed over the letter. Elliot nodded in recognition and turned his attention to Lena with a smile that was both welcoming and assessing. He gestured toward the chessboard. "Are you ready for your match?" Lena nodded, her heart pounding, and took her seat across from the CEO. Alma watched quietly from the corner, pride etched deep in her features despite the fluttering anxiety in her chest. This simple act, playing a game of chess with the CEO, was more than just a contest of skill. It was a profound statement. A janitor's daughter deserved to be seen, heard, and challenged on equal ground. As the first pieces moved, Lena's focus sharpened. The room faded away, leaving only the game and its infinite possibilities. Alma's breath caught in her throat, aware this was a moment suspended on the edge of potential change, where courage met opportunity in the quietest corners of a corporate empire. The chessboard gleamed under the soft glow of the office light, its polished pieces standing like silent sentinels in a battlefield only Lena and Elliot could see. Lena sat straight-backed in the executive chair, tiny fingers poised above the pawn she was about to advance. Across from her, Elliot Granger's eyes narrowed in concentration, a mix of skepticism and intrigue playing on his sharp features. The air was thick with unspoken challenges, a battle not just of minds but of worlds. The CEO, accustomed to calculating markets and steering corporate empires, found himself caught off guard by this quiet child whose every move was deliberate, fearless, and unerringly precise. Lena's strategy was unorthodox, a combination of bold attacks and subtle defenses that seemed to anticipate Elliot's classical playstyle. She didn't just follow textbook moves, she reimagined the game. As she seized control of the center, the CEO's frown deepened. He realized quickly that he was facing more than a prodigy, he was facing a fresh perspective, unburdened by the rigid patterns that dominated his world. With each captured piece, Lena's confidence grew. The game became a conversation, a dance in silence where every shift of a knight or slide of a bishop was a sentence in a language only they shared. Elliot, usually reserved, found himself responding with a rare openness, even a flicker of admiration shining in his eyes. When Lena cornered his king with a sleek move that suggested both simplicity and depth, Elliot paused, then smiled genuinely. The match wasn't just a win or loss, it was a revelation. The CEO's respect for this child transcended the board. "You see the game differently," he admitted, breaking the silence. Lena nodded, cheeks flushed but eyes steady. "Sometimes the rules don't tell the whole story." At that moment, an invisible bond formed. A quiet understanding that true intelligence isn't defined by pedigree or position but by vision and courage. They sat back, the clack of pieces echoing like a whispered promise. Outside the glass walls, the bustle of the corporate world continued unaware. Inside, two worlds had just collided and changed each other forever. The impact of that singular chess match reverberated quickly through the labyrinthine corridors of Granger Tech. Elliot Granger, the company's ceaselessly driven CEO, found the game, and the player, echoing in his thoughts long after the office lights had dimmed. The business empire he commanded was famous for its innovation, yet for all his calculated moves in the market, none had felt as transformative as what the girl in the oversized sweatshirt had unleashed within him. Inspired by Lena's vision and candid challenge to the invisible barriers within his firm, Elliot conceived Bridge. A radical mentorship program designed to connect executives with frontline staff, to break down the unspoken divisions separating the company's strata. It was a gamble, a move far riskier than any product launch or merger. Bridge began quietly, with executives paired anonymously with janitors, cafeteria workers, and clerical staff. The goal was simple yet profound, to foster genuine conversations, exchange perspectives, and uncover hidden talents that the usual corporate filter might miss. It was a cultural experiment, one that surprised Elliot with its immediate resonance. In staff rooms and conference halls, hesitant conversations sparked. Questions were asked about life beyond titles and pay grades. Stories emerged about family struggles, hopes, and dreams tucked behind uniforms and access cards. Silence, once thick with unacknowledged divides, gave way to voices. Meanwhile, Lena's story, initially whispered in hushed corridors, began to spread. Co-workers from every level began to see Alma and Lena not as mere background characters but as vibrant individuals with extraordinary gifts. The janitor's daughter who had checkmated the CEO became a symbol, a quiet revolution against the invisible walls of corporate hierarchy. Yet change was far from universal. Some executives, clinging to tradition, viewed Bridge and Lena's rise as distractions or threats to their carefully curated power. The boardroom buzzed with murmurs about focus dilution and risk to profit margins. But for Elliot, this was a moment of awakening, a promise of a future where strategy included empathy, and success was measured beyond balance sheets. Every chess move Lena made had been a seed planted, and Bridge was the garden beginning to bloom. End of Scene 6. Would you like me to proceed with Scene 7? Scene 7, whispers in the halls. Word traveled fast in Granger Tech's glass-walled corridors, louder than the quiet shuffle of janitor carts and the tapping of keyboards that usually filled the company's air. Lena Rivera, once just a name whispered in the shadows, became a beacon of change. Staff who had ignored Alma and her daughter before now paused in the hallways, curious, hopeful, sometimes incredulous. Employees exchanged stories, about the CEO humbled by a 9-year-old's chess genius, about the mentorship movement sweeping through floors where only hierarchy had held sway. Suddenly, the janitor's daughter was no longer invisible. Lena was an emblem of possibility, a living challenge to the barriers of class and expectation. Alma's life at work began to shift subtly but unmistakably. Colleagues who once nodded politely without recognition now greeted her with tentative smiles, asking about Lena at home or school. These small acts, so ordinary on the surface, carried the weight of transformation. A recognition that humanity isn't defined by job titles or uniforms but by the dreams and talents within. For Lena, this newfound attention was a double-edged sword. Schoolmates who had ignored her now stared, some with admiration, others with envy. Yet, the ripple of change felt daunting. The once quiet girl who found solace in the sanctuary of unobserved play was suddenly at the center of an evolving narrative, a symbol being debated outside her control. Echoes of conversations filled the break rooms and meeting spaces, a murmur of excitement tangled with skepticism. Maybe we've been looking in the wrong places, some said. Others muttered about distractions from real work. But the spark was undeniable. Behind the scenes, the mentorship program blossomed into a movement. Unity and empathy trickled through teams as executives gained insight into lives they'd never encountered, and frontline workers saw the possibility of their voices reaching boardrooms. Alma stood quietly, a guardian watching her daughter's world tilt and turn. She felt pride and fear intertwined, the exhilaration of being seen and the vulnerability that came with it. Lena was becoming more than a prodigy. She was becoming a symbol, and with symbols came expectations and scrutiny. The halls of Granger Tech were changing, shifting from silent segregations to spaces where whispers of possibility could be heard. Word traveled fast in Granger Tech's glass-walled corridors, blending with the gentle clatter of keyboards and echoing footsteps of upper management. Lena Rivera, the janitor's daughter whose deft mind had caught the CEO's attention, was no longer invisible. She had become a symbol, a quiet but potent emblem of change. Whispers spread like wildfire. From the cafeteria to conference rooms, employees exchanged astonished talk about the girl who had checkmated the CEO in their first chess match. Some expressed admiration, others skepticism, but the narrative was shifting. The janitor's daughter wasn't just sweeping floors anymore, she was challenging the very core of the company's culture. Alma began to notice the change. Colleagues who once passed by without a glance now greeted her with cautious warmth. "How's Lena doing with her chess games?" one would ask tentatively. Small smiles became more frequent, and for the first time, Alma felt recognized not just as a janitor but as part of something bigger. Yet, for Lena, the newfound attention felt overwhelming. Schoolmates who had once ignored her now eyed her with a mixture of awe and envy. Some treats felt like camaraderie, but others prickled with isolation. Her quiet world was no longer hers alone. In break rooms, staff debated Bridge, the mentorship program inspired by Lena's story. Some embraced it as a step toward unity and understanding. Others viewed it as an unnecessary distraction, an experiment doomed to fail in the face of corporate realities. Amidst this tide, Alma stood as both protector and witness, sensing the fragile balance between opportunity and risk. Her daughter, once hidden in shadows, was now a beacon whose light drew admirers and detractors alike. The halls of Granger Tech, once rigid and divided, were beginning to hum with possibility, whispers of change carried on the winds of courage and curiosity. Weeks after their initial encounter, the chessboard awaited them once more, a silent witness to the unfolding connection between Lena and Elliot. This time, the office was less formal, the air lighter with anticipation rather than tension. Lena settled once again into the executive chair, now familiar with the environment but still carrying the quiet dignity of a prodigy stepping onto new ground. Elliot leaned in, eyes bright with curiosity rather than calculation. "Last time, you showed me a new way to play. Today, teach me how you see the game." Lena smiled, sensing the invitation to share more than just moves, to bridge the gap between worlds not with power, but with understanding. She began by tracing her fingers along the board, narrating a story as she described her vision. "You don't just move pieces," she explained, "you create a story. Each pawn is a character with a role, each square a chapter in the battle. It's not just about winning, it's about how the story unfolds." Elliot watched closely, absorbing Lena's perspectives with the humility of a learner. Her thoughts on sacrifice and surprise, patience and foresight, challenged his structured worldview. Where he saw risks to be minimized, she saw opportunities to be embraced. Their conversation deepened beyond chess, touching on leadership, innovation, and the overlooked potential around them. Lena's insights illuminated blind spots in Elliot's strategies that spreadsheets alone could never reveal. With every shared idea, their bond grew, from challenger and opponent to mentor and pupil intertwined in a dialogue that transcended age and status. This game was not just a match but a lesson in seeing the unseen, valuing voices from the margins, and embracing change not as a threat but as evolution. Outside the glass walls of the office, the company continued its relentless pace. Inside, an alliance forged over wooden pieces rippled far beyond the chessboard, inspiring shifts in culture, perspective, and power. The excitement that had rippled through the walls of Granger Tech was beginning to confront the cold reality of business pragmatism. At a sleek conference table illuminated by the soft glow of a high-resolution projection screen, the company's board of directors gathered in tense discussion. The faces around the table bore the weight of earnings reports, shareholder expectations, and a mounting unease about the recent cultural shifts spurred by the mentorship program, Bridge. Elliot Granger sat at the head, steadfast but caught between two worlds, his intuitive belief in Lena's potential and the pressing demands of those who sustained his empire. The room pulsed with quiet objections, concerns not openly voiced but palpable in the strained smiles and terse nods. One veteran board member cleared his throat. "We respect the innovation, Elliot, but this focus on mentorship, on highlighting the janitor's daughter, it risks distracting us from our core objectives. Investors expect returns, not social experiments." Another chimed in, voice edged with skepticism, "Our brand has been built on excellence and precision. There's talk already about the Lena Rivera movement. It might inspire some, but it could alienate others. We can't risk our reputation or quarterly earnings." The debate escalated into a battle of perspectives. On one side, the promise of culture change, empathy, and untapped genius; on the other, the cold calculus of market pressures, productivity, and tradition. For some, Lena was a symbol of hope, for others, a potential liability. Alma's daughter, a child whose courage had ignited a company-wide conversation, was now the subject of boardroom politics, not for her intellect, but for her place within an entrenched hierarchy resistant to disruption. Elliot, forced into a defensive posture, articulated his vision with quiet conviction: "We risk stagnation if we don't listen to voices from every level. This isn't just about chess or mentorship, it's about growth, innovation, and ultimately, sustainability." But even as he spoke, the tension in the room was unmistakable. Real change, he was learning, required more than good intentions. It was a negotiation with power itself. As the meeting adjourned, Len's story remained a lightning rod, sparking debates far beyond the chessboard. The backlash was real, and it was only just beginning. The story of Lena Rivera, the janitor's daughter who bested the CEO at chess, began to travel far beyond the glass walls of Granger Tech. A video clip of her legendary match, recorded discreetly by an awestruck intern, spread rapidly across social platforms, catapulting her overnight into the unforgiving glare of viral fame. For Lena, this sudden spotlight was a double-edged sword. On one hand, the admiration was intoxicating, Strangers shared stories of their own struggles, applauded her brilliance, and hailed her as a symbol of hope and change. Messages of encouragement flooded inboxes, and her humble life began to intersect with worlds she once thought unreachable. On the other hand, fame brought an avalanche of pressure and scrutiny. Each move she made on the real chessboard, and in life, became subject to judgment. Critics questioned her authenticity, skeptics doubted her intelligence, and some dismissed her as a fleeting sensation. The delicate balance between childhood normalcy and public spectacle began to tilt precariously. At school, Lena became both idol and target. Former classmates alternated between admiration and envy, some eager to befriend her, others eager to challenge her newfound status. The simple joys she once cherished, quiet afternoons with her mother, uninterrupted time with her notebooks, were compromised by the demands of appearances and expectations. Alma watched with a mixture of pride and apprehension. She understood the cost of visibility all too well, the unwanted attention, the whispers behind backs. She worried about her daughter's innocence being bargained for public acclaim, about whether Lena's world could withstand the storm. Granger Tech's boardrooms buzzed as well. Investors and media outlets demanded interviews, statements, and demonstrations of Lena's influence on the company's trajectory. Elliot Granger himself grappled with balancing Lena's extraordinary talent with the realities of corporate expectations. In this new arena, victory was no longer measured solely in chess moves, but in resilience, the ability to navigate the complexities of fame, identity, and belonging. Lena's journey had transcended a single game, it had become a testament to the cost and power of being seen. The lights were blinding, the cameras relentless, and the air thick with anticipation as Lena Rivera stepped onto the grand stage of the National Chess Exhibition. The venue, a cavernous auditorium filled with rows of eager spectators, glittering flashes, and the ever-watchful eyes of reporters, was a far cry from the quiet janitor's closet where her journey began. Tonight, she was no longer just the janitor's daughter, she was a prodigy thrust into the heart of a high-stakes spectacle watched by millions. Across the table sat a grandmaster, a title layered with years of discipline and global acclaim. The crowd held its breath as the two faced off, the board positioned beneath a giant screen projecting every move. Lena's small hands hovered over the pieces, her expression calm, her mind navigating countless possibilities with practiced ease. The game was a ballet of strategy and intuition. Every pawn pushed, every knight leapt, sent ripples through the audience. Lena played with the fearless audacity of a child unburdened by expectation, yet backed by an intellect that mirrored the grandmaster's. As the match progressed, cheers erupted, not just for skill but for what she represented, a breakthrough, a challenge to the established order. Analysts speculated, commentators praised, and the world watched as she held her ground. But fame's glare was not without shadows. Outside the auditorium, Lena's family received anonymous threats. Harsh words and veiled warnings reached Alma's ears, the weight of public scrutiny pressing on their once private lives. School corridors whispered with envy, and amidst the adulation, a quiet isolation settled over Lena. After the match, which ended in a respectful draw, cameras swarmed for interviews. Lena answered with a maturity beyond her years, emphasizing the game's lessons over the spotlight. Yet, beneath her poised words, a child's heart churned with uncertainty, a longing for normalcy amid the storm. Backstage, Alma embraced her daughter tightly, sharing a silent vow to protect her from the world's harsh glare. The journey from janitor's closet to national stage had been breathtaking, but it was only the beginning of a complex, demanding path. The game had changed everything, but the true challenge was navigating the price of visibility. When the spotlights dimmed and the applause faded from the grand stage, Lena Rivera returned to a world less forgiving, the familiar halls of her school and the comfort of her small apartment. Though the viral fame and national acclaim had transformed her life in irreversible ways, the everyday realities were stark and unyielding. At school, the once invisible girl was now the center of whispered conversations and sideways glances. Some classmates greeted her with newfound respect, peppered with awkwardness, while others saw her as a prize to be jealous of, or worse, a target. The environment, once a refuge, became a cage of scrutiny and expectation. Bullying emerged not in open confrontations but in subtle forms: cold shoulders in hallways, whispered rumors in classrooms, and the isolating silence of friends unsure how to act. Lena's world shifted from one of discovery and possibility to one marked by loneliness and the struggle to reconcile her dual identities. At home, Alma witnessed the emotional toll with a maternal heart heavy with concern. Her daughter's spark, the same light that had illuminated CEO offices and captivated audiences, now seemed strained under pressure. Nights were filled with quiet tears and whispered fears, unspoken but deeply felt. Yet, through the shadows, Lena clung to her love of the game, the one constant amid change. Chess remained her sanctuary, a place where the chaos of the outside world could be contained and understood. Her notebooks, now worn from constant use, were filled with strategies and dreams, a testament to resilience. Grangerteca's culture continued to wrestle with Lena's impact. The mentorship program persisted, but so did the debates within the boardroom and staff conversations. Change, it seemed, was a journey marked by both progress and resistance. In her quiet moments, Lena understood that visibility came with both blessings and burdens. To be seen was a gift and a challenge. As she navigated the complexities of young genius thrust into adulthood's gaze, she embodied not just talent but courage, determination, and an unyielding hope for what lay ahead. Alma sat alone in the quiet evening of their modest living room, the soft hum of the city outside a distant melody. The day's events weighed heavily on her mind. She thought of Lena, her daughter who had journeyed from shadowed corners to the glaring spotlight with a courage that both terrified and inspired. For years, Alma had shielded Lena from the rude edges of the world, protecting her innocence beneath the veil of invisibility. But now, there was no hiding. Lena had stepped fully into the light, a beacon in a world that could sometimes be unforgiving, especially to those who dared to change its rules. Alma understood, deeply, that the price of visibility was steep. The threat letters, the whispers, the isolating stares, they were the dark undercurrents beneath Lena's brilliance. Yet with the weight came something stronger, a purpose. She recalled the moment when Lena first penned that courageous letter challenging the CEO to a chess match. Alma's heart had brimmed with hope and fear. Today, watching her daughter navigate the complexities of fame and expectation, she felt an overwhelming pride in the girl's resilience, wisdom, and spirit. The journey they had undertaken was not merely about chess or corporate change, it was about claiming space in a world reluctant to recognize those it deemed invisible. It was a story of breaking boundaries, of standing tall despite the glare and the shadows alike. Alma embraced the truth that the light, with all its harshness and scrutiny, was also a place of power and transformation. To be seen meant to be acknowledged. To be acknowledged meant to be heard and respected. As she folded the chessboard away for the night, Alma whispered a silent promise, to continue protecting Lena, yes, but also to stand proudly beside her, illuminated not by fortune or power, but by courage and unshakable love. In the dance of shadows and light, they had chosen the light. And in doing so, they had changed everything.